Hi, Sean. I'm happy we were able to reconnect. I know it's been a few weeks since we've had our last session, but I'm worried about you, and I wanted to really focus on how you're feeling, if you're still feeling angry. If you can please share.
Anger. I'm not angry. Like I would love to fucking cut somebody open, and I'm not angry. Like it just sounds nice.
Oh, well, I hear you, Sean, but can we agree that that's not a particular normal thing to think about? Not many people often think about cutting someone open.
I think a lot of people though have these crazy homicidal urges, dude. I think we all want to fucking shank somebody, shit somebody.
Well, Sean, I think those thoughts are valid, but I would have to disagree. I do think that a lot of this stems from the past damage that we're trying to repair.
The damage is done. I get this voice in my head, dude. I get this voice in my head, and it tells me to fucking do something.
Sean, can you tell me when you hear your voice and what it tells you to do?
In the middle of the night, cleaning my fucking guns, thinking about overthrowing the government, thinking about all the ones who wronged me, making a fucking list.
Well, Sean, I do think that we need to focus on more therapy and more therapy sessions, but most importantly, I know you don't like to hear this, but I really do think a life coach would be very beneficial for you.
Go fuck your coach, you faggot!
This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and tonight I'm going over UFC 297, Strickland versus Du Plessis, also Pennington versus Bueno Silva, giving you my thoughts and predictions on the entire 12-bout card, taking place in, where is this, Canada, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where apparently it's pretty cold. I'm fucking freezing right now because I'm in the Midwest in the US, so it's been rough. That's why this is coming out a little bit later, because it's been super cold. Got to conserve energy apparently. But yeah, overall, interesting main event. Obviously, we know what's going on with Sean Strickland and their beef with him and Du Plessis. And will that play a factor in this fight? Now, I initially thought it would. I even did a whole psychological breakdown on Sean Strickland. Come to find out, he released a video today basically saying, "No, we're cool now." I'm like, ah, fuck, I wasted all that time and effort for nothing. But it might come into play when the fight happens. But I'm overall very, very excited about this card. And yeah, there's a lot of good fights on here. Obviously, a lot of Canadians are fighting on this card. And to be honest, the last time that some Canadian card happened, all the Canadians won. So do these Canadian fighters have a leg up already? My thought would be yes with the judges, because there was one particular fighter in that card previously. I forgot the main event. I think it was Nunes versus Aldana, the main event in Canada, that I didn't think won all 3 rounds, but he won all 3 rounds, and now he's back. So I'm like, is he going to be the judge's darling? But before I actually break this card down, I wanted to give you my thoughts on the previous card, which was Ankalaev versus Walker 2. How I did, I went like 9-2. I I kind of give myself a break on one of those losses that I got because I was not technically incorrect. I picked the wrong guy. But I'll give you my thoughts on it, starting with first fight of the night was Joshua Van Felipe Bunes. I think I called it pretty well. Attack the body. Bunes is good. Bunes is very good early, especially. Just that he slowed down, and Joshua Van, it's getting more and more impressive that this kid is just like the real deal. Like, he is definitely being trained correctly. He's got his beautiful boxing, the way he rips the body. He's definitely athletic. His takedown defense is good. His ability to just survive on the ground against a guy like Bunes was impressive as well. The one thing that I'm like, this fucking idiot, there was a moment where he mentioned how he wanted to get a submission, and he looked as if he was going to drop down for a heel hook. And I'm like, oh my God, dude. I had a bet with him and Cop. It was a parlay. So it was like a 1 unit parlay with Cop and Van, which would have gotten me, I think, 2 units back. I'm pretty sure either 2 units or 1 unit. I don't recall. But obviously, Cop didn't show up. So I was like super invested in Van because I basically had a 1 unit bet on Van for me to get like, I don't even know how much of a unit back. I got less than half a unit. So I'm seeing him drop down for the heel hook, and I'm losing my shit. Like, do not go for the heel hook. Luckily, his coaches were like, hey, let him back up. He lets him back up, finishes him brutally. I liked what I saw from Bunes as well. I do think he's going to get some UFC wins. I think he's tough. I think anyone else in that division, he wrecks him early. I just think they gave both of these guys a really tough matchup, more so Bounesse. So I'm interested to see what the team Pitbull brother prospect. Well, I guess he's not really a prospect. He's like 30 some years old, but Joshua Van for sure. The dude is climbing those ranks. Nicholas Moda versus Tom Nolan. This is the one that I kind of give myself a slide. I had a feeling Moda, right? And what's funny, I promised people I'm not betting Moda. I forgot I wasn't supposed to bet him, and I accidentally bet him anyways, which was good because he ended up winning. Tom Nolan did what I kind of expected Tom Nolan was going to do, and that is not fight smart. I didn't I didn't know. I knew not to bet Tom Nolan, but I just didn't know if he was going to fight behind the jab. Dude just rushed in, and you don't do that to a guy like Moda. You don't take away your one key dividing factor against Moda, which is the reach and height advantage, and just cut the distance close for him to hit you. And that's what Tom Nolan did. It's going to be a learning lesson for him. Either he's going to come back more intelligent with his aggression, or he's going to be completely like catatonic with his aggression, where he's just too afraid to cut the distance or really throw because he got knocked out by Nicholas Moda. Moda, I think he's on borrowed time. I think there's a way to beat him. It's a clear way to beat him. If you allow him to let his hands go on you, he'll do that to you. So it's not a terrible loss for Nolan because Moda, he is very skilled. It's just that he made a huge mistake in falling in for his trap. Weston Wilson got utterly destroyed by John Silva. I bet Weston Wilson, not my finest bet, but I had to do it. I had to see what would happen. And John Silva just made it look a little too easy. I will say though, to my benefit, Weston Wilson made it longer against John Silva than he did against Brito. So some progress there. John just whipped his ass. Like I could not believe how bad Weston Wilson looked. I thought, give me a guy in Weston Wilson with some time. Maybe he can pull out a good performance here out of his ass. And he could not. Wonder Boy's dad was yelling at him, like, keep your hands up. It was bad. And I was hoping, in my mind, the guy in the regionals was not good. His tape wasn't good. I can see his talent. It's just that he's a little awkward. And I'm like, maybe with some money that he got from the UFC, maybe the most money he's ever gotten, and a full training camp, maybe he's going to look better. Maybe he can live up to some of his potential where he can maybe get some good offense against on John Silva and maybe get a choke. And there was a moment where he almost had the choke, but it was like almost getting it. It was nowhere near to getting got. And I'm like, okay, John Silva, take care of business. Just kill my bet. Yeah, it was bad. John Silva, though, he's obviously super fun to watch. Did he look minus 800? Not at times, but then he looked minus 14,000. So Farid Basharat defeats Taylor Lapilus. I almost fell for that trap because I knew how good Taylor was, but I know how really good Farid was, and he kind of proved it there, where he really engaged in those takedowns. I didn't find it fun. I didn't appreciate him ruining my fight night by going for multiple takedowns and just kind of dick riding. But it showed his new wrinkle to the game. Like, we know how good his takedown defense is when he gets it, and now we know how good it is when he doesn't always get it. His striking looked good. I know Taylor looked very good on the feet. His takedown defense looked fantastic. So now we know how good Taylor Lapilus is, where he made it very competitive with Farid Basharat. Now, I am interested to see what happens with both these guys because I want to see how they get matched up. Because the guy after this, Marcus McGee versus Gaston Bolanos, Marcus looked damn good. I said there's a chance that Marcus could lose 2 out of 10 times. And the way he fought, it was almost like, go fuck yourself, Johnny. I thought maybe Gaston could crack him. There was no chance. He kept it on the feet the entire time. He knocked the shit out of Gaston multiple times, just dropped him, hurt him. It was very impressive from Marcus McGee. And I know how good Gaston Bolanos is on the feet. For him to do that to him and not even attempt, really, I guess he did attempt one takedown, but not really even want the takedown. I was like, damn, Marcus. So I'm curious, are they going to match up possibly Marcus and Taylor Lapilus? I don't know if they want to maybe match up Basharat versus McGee. I'd like to see that. But damn, both these guys were very impressive. To me, the more impressive guy obviously was Marcus McGee because he actually got a finish. Preston Parsons defeats Matthew Semmelsberger. The one fight that I really felt bad about because I got this one really wrong. Matthew didn't engage. I was like, this isn't the Semi the Jedi that I know. Like, there was something wrong with him there. because like Preston Parsons, I said like his striking's good. Like he needs to focus more on keeping it on the feet, and he looked very good on the feet, but obviously on the ground he's dominant once it hits there. The takedowns themselves aren't always the greatest or the cleanest, but once he hits it to the mat, he dominated. Matthew, he didn't get a knockdown. He didn't really let his hands go. He was defending the takedowns well in the clinch. It's almost like he was like getting his elbow ready to throw it, but he would never throw it. He would throw some decent knees, but nothing significant. So I'm like, what's going on with him? So I lost a bet there. I had a parlay with him and McGee and Cop. Obviously didn't cash, but it was a little sad because I know how good Semi is, and maybe he just needs some time off, get his brain together. Preston looked good, but Preston is destined to lose his next fight, depending on who they give him. Waldo Costa Cortez versus Arlovsky. I felt like, oh shit, I lost money on Semi. Let me make some money with Costa because I'm like Costa's gonna knock him out. There was a point in like the midway the second round, I'm like, he's not knocking him out, is he? So I literally had to see my money just like disappear as he didn't attempt to knock him out. He would throw some crazy punches, but yeah, like I should have known better because I know Costa will go to decision with a lot of guys, and I'm like, but Arlovsky's chin, he'll be able to. I'm like, no, I fell for that trap. It was a terrible fight. Shame on both these men, really. Arlovsky should know better. He wasn't aggressive. I do think Arlovsky could have stolen that fight because it was a minus 800 Waldo Cortez Acosta, and it didn't look that way at all. And I do think if Arlovsky just was a little bit more aggressive, he could have stole it, which wouldn't have been great for me, obviously, because I picked him. I want him to win. I want my, stats to look good. But still, it's like you could have done more. And I think this is really spelling the end of Arlovsky's career, where in the past he would have moments like this where a guy's not really hurting him, but he can still edge it out by being a little bit more aggressive, kind of having that like Arlovsky blitz at the end of the round to steal it. For him not doing it here was like, I think it's nearing the end. He might get another win if you throw him like another bone. Hell, I guess I'm thinking like maybe UFC 300. I doubt they would put him on there after this stinker. Bruno Ferreira defeats Phil Hawes. I fell for my own trap. I bet Phil Hawes. I picked Bruno. I actually had Bruno and Hawes on the under on a couple parlays. One of them cashed. The multiple other ones didn't because they had Semi on them. But I took Phil Hawes. I'm like, it's kind of like a let's go, Phil. We can do this together. And Bruno just dominated him everywhere. Like normally you expect Phil Hawes to look semi decent, and here he didn't look anything good. Like he got taken down, he got judoed down, and then Bruno obviously smashed him in that late round number one. And I'm like, ooh, like that's it. That's Phil Hawes' career. Like he has to either retire or, yeah, that's it. You're gonna get cut anyways, unfortunately. But he's gonna have to retire. I do not want to see Derek Brunson knocking out Phil Hawes in the PFL. That would crush me, right? That would be brutal to see that big fall for Phil Hawes after like coming in and like wrecking dudes and looking great to this. Bruno hits hard. I knew that. It just kind of depressed me seeing Phil Hawes on his back again, even though I kind of knew it was going to happen. Mario Batista defeats Ricky Simone. It was like 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. I picked Mario. I just had that feeling, right? Like Mario was a dog. I bet Mario very late. I didn't track him or anything, but I just had that feeling if he can keep it on the feet, he's going to outpoint Ricky. Like Ricky only really has that big bomb, which he landed in the first round, which there was a big contention. Let me know what you think on this one. But I thought Mario still won it because he did way more. He landed more output. And all Ricky did was kind of drop him, but it was like a drop while he was throwing a knee, which caught him off guard. He basically reshot for a takedown, got back up. Didn't really do much afterwards, but it was like very quick. It wasn't really like Mario was hurt. It was just like he got hit and he fell down because he was on one leg. That's how I viewed it. So I'm like, maybe the judges will still give it to Mario, because to me, Mario did the much better work, the much better impactful strikes in round number one, other than that one good clean shot that Ricky landed, again, off balance. So other than that, I think Mario won round number two. Round number three, just outpointed him, outpaced him, landed some good shots. Ricky, though, my biggest issue with Ricky in the past was like Rob Font, which is funny enough. Mario called him out. Rob Font did the exact same thing that Mario did. Like, he kept it on the feet, and he just, like, outpointed him, just beat him up. And that's kind of the biggest downside for Ricky. If he doesn't have the advantage somewhere, whether it be power advantage, striking advantage, in this case, he didn't have that. He had to rely on his wrestling advantage, which he also didn't have. So it was very close. It was very fun. Great fight. Deserved fight of the night, which I don't think they did. I don't recall if they got fight of the night. But yeah, Ricky, again, on a 2-fight losing streak. This is where Ricky really defines himself. He's been on 2-fight losing streaks before, and then he comes out and looks fantastic. So go back to the drawing board, work on your striking. Just get better at, like, setting up your punches, setting up that big right hand, and maybe you can have more success on the feet with, like, more accomplished strikers like Mario Bautista. Jim Miller defeats Gabriel Benitez. I did have Miller half a unit play on him, which cashed. There were some sketchy moments with Jim. Like, he looked a little tired, but he just thoroughly whipped Gabriel Benitez. To be honest, I took Miller not at dog money, which I believe it was like plus 120, then plus 100. I got him at minus 120, which to me, it was like, damn, I missed the line, but I still think he looked more than accurate and more than capable of winning at minus 120. He actually ended up being like minus 200 in my opinion throughout the fight. There were some sketchy moments there. Like, again, he looked a little tired, but he thoroughly whipped Gabriel Benitez, which he had Kane in his corner, Cain Velasquez. And I'm like, that's not the best dude to have in your corner right now, because this isn't the prison cafeteria, right? Like, what is he going to do? You can't pull out a shiv. So Gabriel Benitez, like, he just took too much time off. And again, he had the wrong cornerman. Magomed Ankalaev defeats Johnny Walker. Johnny looked good early, but that was it. And then Magomed took over, which sucked because, like, I like Johnny, but I hate seeing him on his back again. Broke his nose. This time, though, he didn't get fully, like, knocked out. He took too much punishment with his broken nose. Magomed does not deserve a title shot. He needs, like, maybe 1 or 2 more, and then we can talk. He's not fighting Pereira. Hell no, he shouldn't be fighting Pereira. He shouldn't even be fighting Jamal Hill. Like, give him John Blachowicz again. If wait, is John booked? I don't care. I just don't want to see Magomed in the title picture at this time. Like, he's clearly not there in my eyes. Like, I think he's definitely talented, but you know, he should have won that fight against John Blachowicz, but he didn't. That's the truth, is he didn't win that fight. He's not champion. He got hurt via leg kicks. And in this case, Johnny was attacking those legs pretty well. I think he should have kept up on it. Not to say that Johnny would have had a better shot, but it would have, you know, tested Magomed a bit more, and maybe he could have created a shot for him to win. But yeah, I wasn't impressed by Magomed's performance. Like, you should not let Johnny Walker land, what was it, like axe kicks on you? It is what it is. But let's get started with this main card here, starting with Malcolm Gordon versus Jimmy Flick. Now, let me check my handy notes here, because I don't really think I have to look at my notes. I know enough about these guys. What are the odds on these dudes? Minus 130 Malcolm Gordon, Jimmy Flick plus 110. Both on 2-fight losing streaks. Records are very similar. Malcolm Gordon is 14-7, Jimmy Flick 16-7. To be very quick with this, Jimmy Flick is not very athletic. I think he's got talent, but he's not athletic. Malcolm Gordon, he is very athletic. I think he is capable of pulling off some good techniques. Like, he can go for high amplitude takedowns. He's solid. He's solid when it comes to, well, let me rephrase that. In this realm that we're talking about, this fight, the bottom of the barrel fight, where it's Jimmy Flick versus Malcolm Gordon, and I'm forced to talk about it. What are the positives? That's what I'm going with, because when I say he's athletic for whatever grade you want to give him at the very bottom compared to Jimmy, right? He's more athletic than Jimmy. I think he can get good takedowns. I think he's got some decent enough jiu-jitsu, but I don't think he is tough. I think he is not particularly a quitter, but he's more likely to quit than Jimmy. Jimmy, unathletic. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He gets rocked a lot. I think he can get controlled, but he doesn't quit. He's not a quitter. I think he's got better grappling than Malcolm Gordon, who's been submitted a lot. He's been knocked out a lot. Jimmy Flick's been TKO'd. What I mean by that, like, he in the past, yes, he's been knocked out cold pretty bad, but even though he you retired and he came back just to get his ass whooped. You can see that he's trying to win these fights despite him getting beat up. If Malcolm was in any of these spots against, say, like Alessandro Costa or Charles Johnson, he would have curled up in a ball and not tried. Like Jimmy Flick attempted takedowns. He attempted to win that fight, both fights, even though he's getting chewed up. It's a very winnable fight for either guy. But for me, I think that if Jimmy Flick is, I really don't even think Malcolm Gordon's going to really beat his ass unless he goes out there guns a blazing. It's a Canadian crowd. He's going to go out there. He's the first fight of the night. It's very possible he can go out there and just starch Jimmy. It's a big possibility. But if that doesn't happen, because I don't think it will, I think Jimmy, even if he's hurt, even if he's getting battered, he's going to continuously go after Malcolm Gordon. And if there's a scramble on the ground, I think Jimmy is going to get the better of it because most, if not all of his wins are by submission. And man, I'm telling you, like, I think Malcolm is a black belt himself, but he is quite possibly the worst black belt I've ever seen, where he's getting submitted by just better overall fighters who have a lesser rank, like a purple belt, like Amir Albazi, who might be fighting for a title here soon. But yeah, like tons of submission wins for Jimmy Flick. If not, I think all of them. I'm just looking at his. Yep, no. There's a decision there, but Jimmy, for the lack of anything, he is a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner. I'm going to go Jimmy Flick round number 2 submission. And it's just because of that. It is Jimmy Flick is more tough than Malcolm Gordon. And that is really the only reason. I think Malcolm Gordon is more than capable of winning this fight. But if there's any sort of issue where he's in a position to tap, I think he is more willing to tap than Jimmy Flick. If he gets caught in a guillotine, Jimmy's going to fight for life not to lose. I just don't see Malcolm Gordon being mentally tough, unfortunately. And I'm trying to be more positive when it comes to breaking down fights, but in this case, it's kind of hard. Let's move on. Next fight taking place at flyweight. We've got Jasudavicius versus Priscilla Cachoeira. Jasudavicius minus 410. So she's become even a bigger favorite since yesterday. And Cachoeira plus 300. All right, let me check my notes here. Oh, wow, I actually wrote shit down. Minus 410. Jesus, man. Really? There's no real bet here on Jasudavicius. I thoroughly think she's going to win the fight. Can she lose this fight? Yes, absolutely. She is very hittable. Like, she's not fighting a smaller woman here. I think Cachoeira has improved her takedown defense to an extent. Like, she can definitely stuff takedowns, but once she hits the mat, she ain't got shit on the mat. Cachoeira obviously hits really hard, quite possibly one of the hardest hitting women in flyweight division history. Like, she really cracks. My issue is that the game plan and the blueprint to beat her has always been there. You get her on her back, you try to submit her, you just beat her up. She's got nothing off of her back. Definitely, if she can stuff your takedowns, she's going to come after you and throw hard, which Jasmine is very hittable. But Jasmine, like, I've always liked Jasmine for the reason that, like, as a dog, she has that dog in her. She's got that bitch in her. Like, for real. Like, I watch her fight. She gets hit. She doesn't seem to care. She'll still come after you. She is definitely not very athletic. Like, she's got a kickboxing background, but her grappling really is where it's at. But when I look at her fight, you can see the clear athleticism disadvantage that she's in a lot of these fights. And I think she fought someone similar to Cachoeira in, like, the striking range. Who was it? It was the hell is her name? Gabriela Fernandez. It was one of her last few wins where Gabriela is just a better kickboxer. She's just faster than her, but she still managed to get her to the ground and dominate her. And it's kind of like a rinse and repeat here. Like, we saw what happened with Priscilla and oh my God, Miranda Maverick. Great person, Miranda Maverick, by the way. I've actually spoken to her on the phone regarding pickles, no less, but still, very nice woman. But yeah, I'm never going to say a cross word about Miranda Maverick ever again. But yeah, we saw what Miranda Maverick did, and I actually took Cachoeira to knock out Miranda Maverick because there's always a chance there. There's always a chance that if she can stuff the takedown, she's a much bigger woman. And we saw what Miranda did to her, just dominated her. And one thing positive or negative, however you want to see it, about Cachoeira is that she's a dirty fighter. She's absolutely dirty. She will grab fences. She'll do everything not to lose a fight. Like she Brazilian tapped against Maverick, where she just, and then like she waited, and then Miranda's like, nah, and then she's like, which was funny. Like she's known to do that, eye gouging and all that. I don't think that's going to happen against Jasmine. Jasmine's more of a top control type of person, and she drops bombs when she wants to. It's just that if Jasmine is too like willing to engage her on the feet and she can't get takedowns, which I doubt she won't. I think her body lock takedowns are good. She uses a lot of trips and such. She's going to be able to get Cachoeira down and dominate her on the ground. I think third round TKO is what I'm predicting. She just has to outwork her on the mat, and she can have an easy night. It's just that I don't think it's going to be an easy night. I don't think it's going to be a minus 400 performance. Hence, I'm not going to touch her in the sense of like parlays or even props. Not worth it for me. But for me, it is Jasmine Jasudavicius all the way. She just really has to follow the blueprint. Just don't get touched. And if she does get touched, I actually want to see what happens if Cachoeira hits her flush. How good is her chin? Because I do suspect Jasmine has a pretty solid chin. Like I've seen her get hit pretty damn hard, and she just keeps moving forward. So just for science, I want to see what happens. But I am picking Jasmine to just get on top of her, rinse and repeat. She's not going to get tired. Eventually get like in the crucifix position and just pound her with elbows, and then she's ref's going to be forced to stop it. We get our first Canadian victory here. All right, next bout taking place at welterweight. We've got Johan Lainesse versus Sam Patterson, the White Lion versus the Future, which is funny. I'm just looking at his nickname now, that his nickname is the Future when he was literally blasted back into the past from, what's his name, Anal? What's his name? Something Anal? Anal Ashmouth. Anal Assmouth. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Yanao Ashmuz. Interesting, because that's the biggest talking point about this fight is Johan Lainesse, who is minus 145, going to be able to knock out Sam Patterson, who is plus 120. Now, I'll be upfront. I didn't even realize this was at welterweight. For whatever reason, my brain didn't connect it, because I'm like, he's a 155er and he's so fucking lanky. He should gain a couple pounds, move up in weight. And I didn't even realize it when I was taping it, which when it kind of hit me, I'm like, oh wait, he is moving up in weight. How does this fight really happen? What happens in this fight? Because Sam Patterson, just remembering that knockout, it was really bad, because he was supposed to come in here and beat Ashmuz no problem, because Ashmuz is more of a wrestler, definitely more of a grappler, at least from tape. But what we don't realize is how good of an athlete and how good of a striker Ashmuz is when he's so quick. And I think that's what happened with Patterson. If I'm being honest, man, like going back and watching it, I don't think Patterson really respected the power or really the striking of Ashmuz. And he threw a naked leg kick. He basically knocked himself out. Gravity knocked him out. He fell backwards, and then Ashmuz just pounded his brains in. It was one of the worst knockouts of that year. It was really bad. Johan Lainesse, he hits hard. That's his biggest saving grace. He hits really hard with both hands. He's Canadian, obviously. The crowd's going to be all up on him. He might come out here very aggressive. And the biggest thing I'm hearing is he hits him. He's eventually going to catch Sam Patterson, because although Sam Patterson kind of chinny, he gets dropped a lot, he's a solid fighter. He's a solid fighter, and moving up in weight, I do expect him to look better. So to me, if I'm being honest with this, like Johan is not impressive to me. He really hasn't been in a long time. He was impressive early when he's getting knockouts, obviously dropping dudes. But I picked Gabe Green to beat him. I'm like, Gabe Green, all he has to do is survive and pour it on him late. And that's what he did. He survived that drop down. He got clipped pretty damn bad, and then he came back, beat him in that same round. I think it was round number 2 in their fight. And then I picked him against Darian Weeks. He didn't look good against Darian Weeks, nearly lost it. It was very close. He was less aggressive. He was kind of afraid to gas out, because that's what happened with him and Gabe Green, who has excellent cardio. And then obviously Mike Malott just took care of business, no problem, but he did catch Mike. That's the thing about Johan. He covers distance very well, because he kind of blitzes you, and you don't really see it coming because he's pretty slow. He's kind of tanky. He's a beefy dude for 170. He's 6'1", 76-inch reach. So I'm thinking, yeah, he's going to just be able to blitz him eventually and catch Sam Patterson. But the more I'm thinking about it, I don't know how easy that's going to be, because Sam on paper, visually, I think he's the better fighter minus the chin. Good volume, good straight punches, great grappling. Primarily that front choke, that guillotine choke that he has, super long arms. And I think if he ever hurts or just causes a bad shot from Johan Lainesse, he might be able to get that guillotine. But I am definitely worried about Sam Patterson getting dropped and hurt, because he's been dropped and hurt a lot of times. But now that he's moving up in weight, will his chin get better? There's too many question marks on this one. So I'm kind of leaning with the safe side, if I'm being honest, with Johan Lainesse first round knockout. But I am going to pay attention, because I do think Sam Patterson has a really good chance to win this fight. Definitely win this fight in the later rounds. So if, say, he does get dropped in the first round and he survives, I will be placing a bet live on Sam Patterson, because I do think he is definitely the better fighter between the two. Like, I think he's got more skill. It's just he doesn't move his fucking head. No defense really overall. It just bothers me, man. Like, you just move your head a little bit. I just worry so much that he's going to get clipped, right? Like, I want to say I think Sam Patterson can win this fight, and I think he can, but to put my money on him right now as a dog, I can't, because there's a good chance he does get dropped early. If Johan Lainesse feels that crowd and the energy, and he's just like, fuck it, do your blitz, he might catch him really clean, and then Johan will finish him off. Johan has good takedowns offensively, good defensive takedown. He's just kind of goofy and awkward. It's just my biggest issue with Johan himself, why I'm so like weary about this fight, is that he's not as aggressive as he's been. Now, all that shit goes out the window. So I want to see how this fight plays out. I really want no action in it, other than, possibly betting. Well, I will be betting Sam Patterson live, but possibly betting the prop, the knockout prop for Lainesse. So I probably won't take either guy's money line up until that live prop or live betting opportunity comes up for Sam Patterson, but I might just go ahead and take that knockout prop for Johan Lainesse. It's just, there's too many variables here. I wanted to see how good Patterson's chin is now that he's moving up in weight. It's a fascinating fight. It's very fascinating, because, again, will those 15 pounds save his life here? There's a good chance. Usually what I've noticed, when people move up in weight, they do look a little bit better. They're less, drowned, or dried up, that is, not drowned. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to go with Johan Lainesse, round number 1 knockout. But this is the one I'm like not positive in. The tape doesn't really tell everything, because, again, this is Sam Patterson's first fight at 170, and I want to see how he looks. So moving on, we've got the ladies. It's another fight that is kind of difficult to read. We've got Jillian Robertson minus 200, which should tell you probably bet whoever Jillian Robertson is fighting, if she is the favorite, against Polyana Viana minus or plus 165. Both these women have issues, lots of issues. Jillian Robertson broke her last fight against Baby Shark. Like, Dean Thomas apparently was even like, yo, the bitch is fucking up. During the broadcast, we're like, yeah, I was talking to Dean Thomas, and he's saying, like, this is not what they trained. This is not what they trained. This is not what they practice. To me, Jillian Robertson is takedown or bust. If she cannot get the takedown, she will fold. And against Polyana Viana, she can get taken down, definitely. She has knockout power. She can keep it on the feet, but for how long? If she gets taken down, I think she's more than easily subbable. The fight with her and Yasmin Lucindo, there's a moment where Lucindo basically telegraphed the shit out of the arm triangle, and Polyana did nothing about it. Like, it was coming. There was moments for her to adjust. She just gave it up. Like, she didn't know what she was doing. And it's crazy. It's really crazy, because Jillian, obviously one of the better grapplers in the UFC at the lower weight classes for the women, where she can get submissions, arm bars, rear naked chokes. Like, she's solid on the mat. She can dominate women on the mat when she gets it there. But Polyana Viana, she hits hard. And if she just drills takedown defense, which I cannot confirm she's been doing, because all I see on her Instagram is her fucking cosplaying. So another added element, is she just going to continuously cosplay Naruto characters, or is she going to be fucking training? I don't know. It's such a dumb fight. I hate this fight the most because there is some value on Viana if she is training correctly and she can keep it on the feet. I think she whips the shit out of Jillian Robertson pretty easily. We saw what she did to Jinyu Fry, just knocked her shit out. Jillian is known to take a punch and just call it a day. Like if she gets hit pretty damn hard and she can't get a submission or a takedown, she's going to get her ass whooped. But it's just if she does get that takedown, and it really just takes that one, because I think if Polyana gets taken down, that's it. It's over. I think Jillian will find some appendage or some sort of choke and get her out of there. It's just so, it's not worth it for me. I'm going to, give me a second. I'm really flipping a coin because like right now I initially picked Jillian Robertson. I'm gonna let the coin decide because I do think it can be a dog or pass situation betting wise or submission prop, whatever. But like for a pick, I'm gonna say heads Robertson, Viana tails. It is Polyana Viana wins this one by knockout. I'll go with that. Next bout, we've got the rematch, probably one of the better rematches, the only rematch, funny enough, to come out of the Contender Series. So it is, what the hell's his name? How do you pronounce it? Sidey versus Ramon Taveras 2. The first fight was interesting, right? It got stopped really early by a specific ref that I know very well. Some might say he's a good friend of mine. That's, I'm just saying. But it was a very poor stoppage. I hate to admit. Very, very poor. Ramon got dropped, fell backwards, caught himself, and then he kind of played off of his back a little bit, trying to kick Sidey off of him, and they got stopped right then and there. It kind of really stained this whole rivalry, if we want to call it one, because it is now. They're fighting again, but it just stained that whole card, that Contender Series bout, because there was a good chance Taveras could have won that fight. He was landing some good shots. Taveras, really, really good boxer, great hands. Like he came back in the Contender Series and just dominated some dude on the feet. Like it lasted like 30 some seconds. It was a guy who sounded like a Roman emperor. What was his name? His name was Cortavius Romulus. Doesn't that sound fucking awesome? Sounds like he belongs like in the battlefield. And then Series City, his only loss is to, I think his name is, what was his name? Damn it. What is his name? Like Matteo Vogel, I believe. Matteo Vogel. He just fought in the Contender Series as well. He lost to a guy named Timmy Twilight. Yeah, Matteo Vogel. Very good fighter out of Canada. Very, very good. But again, he just recently lost to a guy named Timmy Twilight. Yes, that's correct. He didn't get a Contender Series contract, which was great. Timmy Twilight, that is, he didn't deserve it. But that's how good CD is. Like in the Canadian regional scene, he fought one of the better guys, and that's his only loss. He seems pretty damn solid. He trains with the right people. He trains with Mike Malott and all those dudes in Canada. I think Mike Malott, Jasudavicius, Charles Jourdain, and then Taveras, he's training at Team Alpha Male. So he's got the boxing, and he's getting better at the takedown defense. It's going to be an interesting bout. And did I read the odds yet? It's Sidey, who won the original matchup, minus 180, Taveras plus 155. And I picked Taveras to win that first fight, and I think he can actually beat Sidey. I think it's a tough matchup for Taveras, but I think if he makes proper adjustments in the sense of like you got to respect your opponent. I don't think he really respected the striking of Sidey. Sidey hit him pretty hard, knocked him down. Not like the most vicious knockdown, but still he knocked him down. So he has the edge in chin and power so far between the two because it was proven. He hit him once and he dropped him. Taveras hit him multiple times, didn't drop him. It just comes down to, can Taveras continuously land those shots and stuff takedowns? I think Sidey is more well-rounded based only because he is. That's really it. Like there's nothing else. Like it's not like he's a great wrestler or a great grappler or a great striker. He does everything well enough to be better at this point than Taveras. It's just that is Taveras going to be able to really implement everything he's been learning at Team Alpha Male, stop takedowns if it comes, keep it on the feet where he is, to me, quite possibly, he's vicious on the feet, absolutely vicious with the striking. Like his good head movement, just has to be a little bit more careful, and I think he can win this fight. There's not really much to say. There's not really much to break down other than, they have similar reaches, 72 for Sidey, 70 for Taveras. To me, it just comes down to, is Taveras going to learn from that experience where he has a loss on his record to this guy, where it's kind of stained. You got a new start to beat him. You felt his power. You respect him a little bit more. And what's Sidey going to do? Is he going to mix in takedowns? In the first fight, he didn't try any takedowns. I often see him not even attempt takedowns in fights where it's probably the easiest path to resistance, right? The easiest path to victory, that is. And I think it's going to be a striking matchup. And I think Taveras will have a good chance here to possibly catch him. It's not going to be an easy fight for him, definitely, because I do think they're very evenly matched. And Sidey deserves to be the favorite because I think he definitely is a little bit better than Taveras from last I've seen him. I just want to see what Taveras can do, and I am considering betting Taveras again to see if he can actually beat Sidey. So I'm going to take Taveras second round TKO to knock out Sidey in Canada, which would be, I want to see what the crowd reacts. But I'm going to go with Taveras to get that knockout. I think he's got a fun style. I think he really reminds me of like a more aggressive Rob Font mixed with like Jorge Masvidal. And I think he can bring something special to the bantamweight division, just knocking dudes out with nasty combinations. As for Sidey, he's a solid dude. I really do think he's got a bright future. They're both very young. I guess Taveras is 30. Sidey's 27. I just want to see what these guys can do. It's going to be, I think this is one of my favorite fights of the night. Again, like a fight to be placed on a UFC pay-per-view card that happened in the Contender Series. Just with that little sample size that we saw with less than a round that happened, I think there's more that could have happened there that would have been fantastic, and I think they're going to show it off here. So, again, Taveras, round number 2 TKO for me. All right, next bout, we've got Charles Jourdain versus Sean Woodson. We've got Air Jourdain versus Sniper Woodson. We have Jourdain minus 185, come back on Woodson plus 150. Good matchup between these two. And I've got questions about both these guys. Main question for Sean Woodson is, how good is his chin? Because we saw in his fight against Luis Saldana that, at 145, this 6'2" giant, he may not have the best recovery. He may not have the best chin because he's just sucking himself dry to make this weight. And granted, he's not really had any issues. It's just that the guy's, 31 years old. How much longer can he keep this up? And I'm worried that his weight cut is going to severely and eventually hurt him in matchups where, say, he could have some chance here, because he is very talented. He's got great boxing. He uses his length well. He's definitely working on his submissions and his takedowns. He's a big dude, cause a lot of trouble for a lot of dudes. For Charles Jourdain, am I falling for the trap to think that he is progressing his skill set? He's 28 years old, and he has fought some really good competition as of late. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, one of which was against Kron Gracie, which, you can put an asterisk next to that because Kron looked like absolute dog shit, but his boxing looked good. He didn't get taken down, but again, Kron looked like fucking terrible. And then Ricardo Ramos, he submitted him pretty easily. Granted, he just did not let go of that guillotine choke. He basically got taken down multiple times, but he eventually got the guillotine choke. Now, you could take that information and say, hey, Charles Jourdain is definitely improving. He's got the striking now. He's more confident with his grappling. Or is it that Ricardo Ramos just was an idiot? He didn't feel any threat and then eventually got caught in that guillotine. So it's really tough to say, because Charles Jourdain, he is uber talented. He's very fast. He hits hard, great striking, definitely getting more dangerous with the submissions. Is he going to pull a stunt again? Is he going to, say, get a little too aggressive or a little too calm, and then Sean Woodson just takes over? Sean's got great hands, great combinations, right? That's one thing about Sean that I've always enjoyed, is he lets his hands go. He's fantastic, right? It's just, we saw with Saldana, that he was just faster than Sean, because Sean is, a tall, lanky, goofy dude that, although he does rip to the body, he throws combinations like pretty fast. If you can counter him, he won't see that shit coming. His brain's not going to know what to do. His giraffe legs are going to fucking stumble. And then is Charles going to jump for guillotine there? Like, what's going to happen? Like, Sean's been submitted before. Funny enough, I think both these guys got submitted by the same dude in Erosa. Did they both get submitted by Erosa? I don't remember if Charles got submitted by Erosa. Yep, both with the Darce choke. It's awesome. Damn, Erosa's beating some good competition, but here we are talking about not Erosa. But yeah, Charles Jourdain. I'm picking Charles to win. I'm picking him to win TKO or submission round number 2. I think it's going to be round number 2. First round, he's going to have trouble with that reach. Woodson will have success. It's just, what is Charles going to do? When is he going to put it on him? And I went back and I rewatched some fights. Like I saw the Andre Ewell fight where I think Ewell had a significant reach advantage over Charles Jourdain, but he wasn't as tall as Sean Woodson. I think he was listed at 5'8" or so with like a ridiculous reach. And Sean is like 6'2". So I don't know what Charles's game plan is going to be, but I do think it would benefit him for going for takedowns. I think Sean definitely can stuff takedowns, but like he's given them up pretty easily, especially when he doesn't see them coming. I think if Charles could get on top of him, he can cause a ton of damage. Like, you don't have that hide and reach advantage when you're on your ass. So I'm going to pick Jourdain round number 2. But granted, this is not like a super solid prediction for me, because I do think that if Sean survives the first round, he has a good first round, and then Charles just kind of like, I'm going to win, I'm Canadian, which, dude, I've seen this happen with him so many times. Like, he looks good one fight, then he looks like shit the next fight. Like, he's just an anomaly. And then that's kind of why I picked Kron Gracie to beat him. I'm like, Charles cannot be trusted not to do something stupid. And then he didn't do anything stupid against Charles or Kron Gracie. And he even said, like, yeah, I learned, don't do anything stupid, no kicks. And I'm like, okay, he's learning. And then against Ricardo Ramos, like, he submitted Ricardo Ramos. I'm like, dude, is this guy getting better, or is he just going to trick me again into thinking he's just like this phenomenal prospect? And then he's going to be 32 years old, and I'm still saying the same shit about him. That's my biggest issue. This is a good test for him because he's got a big, tall, long dude. How is he going to handle that? How is his technique going to be applied? How is his fight IQ going to be? So I'm keeping an eye on Charles Jourdain to see how he handles Sean Woodson, because if Charles Jourdain is the guy who I initially think he was, the guy with all this talent, great prospect, he should come out here and handle Sean Woodson no problem. Because as good as Sean Woodson is, when it comes to like his striking and his overall game, he's a tall, slow, lanky guy. There's a lot of ways to beat him, and I want to see if Charles can figure that out. So yeah, I'm going with Charles round number 2 TKO. All right, we've got the prelim main event here. We've got Brad Superman Katona versus Garrett 15 units Armfield. I am still waiting for all of you out there who bet lots of units on Armfield after I told you to bet all this money on Armfield to send me the money you owe me from betting Armfield. Which, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I basically said I'm going to bet everything on Garrett Armfield to beat, what the fuck was his name? Toshimi whatever. Toyoshimi, because I'm going to beat the shit out of him. I put as much money as I had available laying around on Garrett Armfield to beat him. And for whatever reason, I shut the knot. I was worried. I was worried he was going to lose. I kept hearing like, oh yeah, he's going to gas out in the second round, and then he's going to get taken over and blah, blah, blah. He whipped his ass. He looked like fucking Mayweather out there. And I was like, it was in Singapore, I believe. Oh God, my was hard as that night. I just remember that was the day that Korean Zombie got retired, so I felt a little sad now. But I like Garrett Armfield. One of my favorite bantamweights. I've been keeping an eye on him for a while. I was going to bet him against Jose Johnson, and clearly I bet him against Toshimi, whatever, because his boxing is ridiculously good. I think he's training with, he's not at Killcliff. I just saw that it's listed as Killcliff here at his Tapology. He's training with Trey Ogden and those other guys from Kansas City. And he's got a good wrestling background, great boxing. The dude is tough. He hits hard as hell. good submission defense. But, excuse me, I worry he gasses out. I worry that he doesn't really have a plan B when he can't knock a dude out. And it sucks to say because I think this is a very, very, very tough matchup for Garrett Armfield. And I kind of knew because Garrett tweeted something saying, like, yo, I got a fight booked up against somebody in Canada. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I tweeted him, I'm like, is it Katona? And he basically confirmed. I'm like, oh, that's a tough ass fight. He must see something in Brad Katona for him to think he can knock him out. And if you go back and watch his fight with Cody Gibson, yes, you can be surprised to think like, yeah, why can't I knock him out? He was getting hit up pretty well. The thing about Brad, and I don't know if I read the odds, minus 180 for Brad Katona, come back on with Garrett Armfield, plus 150. Katona is fucking good. It's crazy for me to say those words. He is very good as a fighter. And he has a very GSP like fighting style where he definitely can strike. We saw in his last fight, the guy has a good chin. He's got the dog in him, which is crazy. Like, I can't believe I'm saying this about Brad Katona. He can grapple. He can really do it all. He's got a good pace. He's not a master of anything, but he's just good at everything. I would say his grappling, his control. He's just so good at finding ways to win a decision. And then we saw when he needs to bite on his mouthpiece and just start throwing hammers, he can do that too. And against Garrett Armfield, I think definitely Garrett's going to have the way better striking. He's so fluid on the feet that he doesn't even have to think about what to do next. But I really do think that like Brad does possess, and I cannot fucking believe I'm saying this, a lot of GSP qualities. Like, it's so weird to me that like I'm comparing the two because they shouldn't be compared, but here I am doing it. Like, he just has that ability. Like I'm watching him fight Timur Valiev in The Ultimate Fighter, and I thought he lost that fight, but he still won. And I'm like, how does he do this shit? How does he find a way to like convince the judges that he won? He has that power behind him. And I think Garrett Armfield, and I hate to say this because I love Garrett, and I would love to see Garrett Armfield win, but I do think that Garrett, his takedown defense early is going to be good. Obviously, striking is going to be good, but down the line, I think Brad pushes a harsh pace where he can push him against the cage, tire him out, wear on his arms. His striking is going to be less effective. Katona's not going to slow down, and he's just going to be able to get takedowns and control time. And as much as I hate control time, I think Garrett is very good at giving it up. The control time, that is. Like, another guy who fought Mateo Vogel, he was beating the absolute dog shit out of Mateo Vogel. Again, one of the better Canadian prospects who, again, lost to a guy named Timmy Twilight. And he bloodied him up bad, busted him up. It looked like near the end, like he's going to beat his ass. The round ends, round number one. Round number two comes out. And Garrett wasn't as fresh. Garrett wasn't as fast. Garrett couldn't really stuff the takedowns. Gets his back taken by this guy he beat the absolute dog shit out of. Probably broke his nose, and then he eventually got submitted. And what made me a big fan of Garrett was that fight. Not because he beat his ass, but he was stuck in that choke, and it was dead to rights, and he fought it off for as long as he could. He did not give up. And eventually he succumbed to that choke. Like, he got it tight, and then he had to tap. But like, he made damn sure not to tap to that any sooner than he needed to. So Garrett's a tough dude, but we've seen him get choked out before against Onama, who's not the greatest grappler in my eyes. He's just more of a power hitter with really good wrestling. And for me, Katona, very, very skilled, and he just finds a way. I think he's got more options to win. Armfield's not going to out-grapple Katona. He can only outstrike him and possibly knock him out. But for me, it is Katona to win this fight by a decision. I cannot believe I spent all this time talking about how Brad Katona reminds me of GSP. But yeah, there it is. Like, he trains out of SBG. Maybe Johnny Walker's idiocracy transfers over to him. I don't know in this fight. But like, Katona definitely belongs in the UFC. He's only lost to, it was Marab and some other guy. Who was that other guy? Oh yeah, Hunter Azure, which that was like peak Hunter Azure prior to getting like knocked the fuck out by Boom Kelleher, which yeah, man, I know I'm getting off topic here, but Hunter Azure was beating the shit out of Boom Kelleher, and then he just took a shot, went straight down. I'm like, oh, my money. But yeah, let's move on to the main card here. First fight of the main card, of absolute fantastic fight. I went back and forth on with some, but we've got Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev, and we've got Evloev. He is the favorite, isn't he? Minus 165. Come back on Arnold Almighty Allen is plus 130. Now, I went back and forth on this one, and I initially thought, like, how live is Arnold Allen here? And I think he's pretty damn live. Like, he's a really good fighter. He is so damn good. He's number 3 versus number 6. Evloev is number 6. Now, if I'm going to be fully honest with you, I'm picking Evloev to win this one by decision. But let me explain to you the thought process that I had with this one, why I kind of thought it was tough. Evloev, he hasn't looked all that particularly great all the time. He's had a lot of moments for a guy who has his accolades, his background. He's a great wrestler, great grappler, really good striking, M1 champion. He's had a lot of moments against what one would consider kind of weaker competition, not necessarily top 10 level competition, where he's looked very vulnerable. So when I think of that, I'm like, oh man, like Arnold Allen is top 3. Like, he's really good. He's beating really good competition. Why can't he win this fight? Then I look back, I'm like, there's also been moments against really good competition for Evloev where he's looked ridiculously dominant. Dan Ige, for example. Funny enough, both these men went to a decision with the Carney. What is his name? Nick Lentz. Evloev went to a split, which I didn't think it was a split. And then Arnold, just beat him by decision. But my thought process is Arnold hits really hard, really good striker, really good takedown defense. Can he keep it on the feet and maybe knock out Evloev? Yeah, definitely a chance. Plus 135 is why that's the reason. Evloev, though, I've been calling him the Russian Dynamo for a long time because he can do everything. He not only can take you down, he can control you with jiu-jitsu, take your back. He can submit you. He can strike with you. He's quick. He's fast. He can mix things up. And that's ultimately the reason why I'm picking him to win, because this, call me stupid or whatever, back in, I don't remember what year it was. Let me check. There was a fight back in 2018. And yes, that was many years ago, but Arnold Allen fought a guy named Mads Burnell. Mads Burnell, if you don't know, he fought in Bellator for a long time. I think he fought for the title or fought for a title shot. And he's been in like a winning and a losing streak. He's a good fighter. He's 18-5 right now. But the issue with that fight, why I go back to it all the time, because Arnold Allen was losing that fight completely because he got taken down eventually. Like, he had great takedown defense at that time, but eventually Mads got him down and controlled him. And he lost round number, I think he lost round number 1, round number 2, and a majority of round number 3 just with control time. Up until Mads, left his chin there and he got caught with, I believe it was a ninja choke by, it was like considered a front choke, so ninja choke by Arnold Allen. But I look at that, I'm like, am I going to put a ton of stock in that? Because the man has gotten bigger, he's gotten stronger, he's gotten older, he's gotten wiser. Is he going to display that same level of like inability to get back up against a really good black belt grappler? And Evloev, to me, much better fighter than Mads Burnell. And ultimately, I came up to the decision, even if he is better at stuffing takedowns and he can get back up, I think Evloev is that good to continuously go after him and put him in those situations where he is losing, just being on his back and on the feet. I still think that Evloev is tricky enough to win some exchanges and win on the feet alone, then mix in the takedowns. I think Arnold, his only chance to win, I think will be, well, not his only chance, but one of his 2 chances would be to win via knockout, or if he can stuff every single takedown from Evloev and just keep it on the feet and outpoint him, he can definitely win that way. But I don't think he's going to be able to stuff every single takedown. And because of that, that's what ultimately led me to Evloev to win this one by decision. I might parlay him with some other characters on this card, but there's a really good chance here for Arnold Allen to like shock a ton of people. I know the odds themselves aren't, crazy wide, but I think a lot of people do believe like Evloev has this. He should win this. And then there's the other half of people like, oh, Evloev's like kind of shitty against like Diego Lopez. He still won that fight. That's the biggest factor. Doesn't matter if he looks kind of shitty in this fight. All that matters is that he wins the fight. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. He's going to win the fight. He might get dropped. He might get hurt. But I think he'll still win. So I'll go with Evloev by a decision. All right, next bout, Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault. Curtis is minus 165, come back on power bar. Action man versus power bar. Barriault plus 140. The fighter I mentioned earlier in the beginning that fought in Canada, got a 30-27 on all cards, was Marc-Andre Barriault in Canada. Like, he beat Eric Anders in a fight where I didn't think he got a 30-27 across the boards. I thought for damn sure, because I bet Anders. And not to say that I think Anders won, but in my mind watching it live, I'm like, there's a good chance that he could maybe get a split decision here. There's a good chance because I think Anders did enough to maybe steal a round or two. Maybe, not thinking that, obviously they're in Canada, but Mark just swept them on all the cards. And I'm like, is it fair to think that? I didn't think it was that fair of a card. I thought maybe if you want to go 29-28 on the whole cards, yeah, I can believe that. 30-27 though, what's up, Marc-Andre Barriault? Who do you know in the commission over here in Canada? So I'm thinking about this fight. We got action man Chris Curtis, 36 years old, against power bar Andre Barriault, 33. He is going to be the taller guy. He, funny enough, has a inch and a half reach disadvantage. And if I'm being honest, thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, Chris Curtis, better boxer, probably the better chin. Come out here and just knock the shit out of Marc-Andre Barriault, make the Canadian crowd just go sad. But is it that simple? I kept thinking about it more. Yes, Chris has nasty counters. He hits to the body well. He goes forward. But he is so damn beatable. And we've seen it before. I think the blueprint is out for Chris Curtis. You frustrate him on the outside. Don't engage with him enough. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm on the outside, you can't hit me kind of shit. You just kick him from the outside, occasionally throw some punches, make sure you avoid the counters, disrupt his rhythm, and you piss him off, and then he doesn't win. Like, we've seen it. We saw it in his last fight against Evloev. Evloev embarrassed him, if I'm being honest with you, man. Like, he couldn't touch him. Took him down, broke his takedown defense streak. He had 100%. Now it's over. Not that that matters, right? But I think it kind of showed me and showed a lot of people, like, yeah, I think Chris Curtis is either slowing down at welter or at middleweight. He was talking about dropping down to welterweight again. He's originally a welterweight. I don't know if he can make the weight, but like, he's getting older. And is this the end of the experiment of Chris Curtis, right? Like, he's on this card because his buddy's on the main event. Not to say that that should, disqualify anything. Like, yeah, like, Chris Curtis is a great fighter. He's going to put on an entertaining fight. If he makes this a dog fight, he's going to whip the shit out of Marc-Andre Barriault, because Barriault's chin, I question it a lot. My issue with Andre is how good has he progressed training at Killcliff, because I see the progress in him. Like, oh, he's getting a little bit better. And then he has performances where he drops Eric Anders. I'm like, damn, he's whipping his ass. Not necessarily whipping his ass in the sense of like, oh, he's going to 30-27 him, but like whipping his ass enough to me, like, for me to be like, damn, he's beating Eric Anders. He dropped him. Am I getting fooled by him? But realistically, I'm like, can Marc-Andre, can he pull off the same kind of style that will really piss off Chris Curtis? And I'm thinking, yes, he can, because he is going to be in Canada. He wants to win at home. If he is smart, he plays that game. He has good cardio. He can use the outside. He can stifle anything Chris throws at him. And realistically, I do think Chris is slowing down a bit. And I mean, like, Father Time is taking its toll on the guy. He's had 40 professional fights. And this is a prime moment for Marc-Andre Barriault, who hasn't looked all that impressive. Like, he came into the UFC and he lost 3 in a row, right? He looked terrible. It's almost like he had skill to beat a bunch of dudes in these regional scenes, but he didn't have UFC level skill. And I think Killcliff is really progressing him and just getting better at like using his skill set. Like, he is nasty in the clinch. He throws nasty slicing elbows. He's vicious, man. That's what I do like about Marc-Andre. Like, he can take an ass whooping if you don't hit him hard enough, which I don't think Curtis is going to be able to hit him that clean, because let me rephrase that. Of course, Curtis can hit him clean. I think that if Mark fights intelligently, he's going to minimize that risk severely so he doesn't get hit cleanly. And then he can push Curtis against the cage, kind of outmuscle him, not try to go for takedowns, right? Knee the shit out of him, elbow him. And I think he can really possibly get a TKO against Chris Curtis. The reason for it was his last fight. He got cut pretty damn bad. I believe it was in the left eye, where I was like, damn, it's a cut. You know, it's fine. But I saw his progress like months later, and that eye looked fucked. It looked really bad, like disgusting meat hanging off of his face. It just didn't look good. And I don't know if it's healing correctly. It looks better now, but I do think just one clean elbow slices him open. He starts bleeding, and they might call it off. It wasn't a terrible cut, but if Mark targets that, keep that in mind, he keeps targeting it, there's a really good chance that they could stop it, right? Again, 30-27s on all 3 cards. They might stop that fight early, I'll just say. I'm going to go with Marc-Andre. I'm considering betting Marc-Andre. Again, there's a lot of risk in betting him, right? If he goes a little too crazy, as I put it, I don't know much about Canada, but I've heard a lot about Newfoundland and how people don't like the Newfies and how they're considered quote-unquote idiots. If Marc-Andre goes full Newfie, there's a really good chance that he can get knocked out here. But if he fights smart, he's got more than enough skill to really, I hate to say this, beat the old man and Chris Curtis. Like, 36 isn't old, but 36 plus 40 fucking fights, that's pretty old. You know what I mean? Like, he's taken a beating. Clearly takes a beating in the gym as well from Strickland. And I think this is a very good moment for Marc-Andre Barriault. If this was like 2 years ago, Chris runs right through him. But right now, I think it's a really good spot for him to really look like a new star in the division. Like, oh shit, he beat Chris Curtis. Let's see what he can do against, who can he beat? Number 12, 37. Like, let's match him up with Hermanson. See what happens there. That's kind of what my brain goes to. But yeah, I'll go with Marc-Andre Barriault. Stay on the outside, stifle him with kicks, clinch him up, maybe go for a takedown attempt, kind of get it in his head like he's going to try to take me down. Maybe he gets it, maybe he doesn't. At that point, if you don't get it, throw the elbows. So I'll go with Marc-Andre to win a pretty entertaining fight. Just don't get knocked out. All right, next bout. Is this the highlight? What do you call it? The highlight bout, the fight before the main events, whatever. Neil Magney versus Mike Malott at welterweight. We've got Neil Magney. He is obviously the veteran here. What, 39 fight veteran? Damn. He is plus 230. Come back on proper Mike Malott. He is minus 280. I'm taking Mike Malott to win this one by, I'm going to say, round number 2 submission, possibly even knockout, depending on if the leg kicks really affect Neil Magney. But what are Magney's path to victory? Well, he clearly has a huge reach. He's got a, 7-inch reach advantage over Mike Malott. I don't trust Mike's chin. I really don't trust his chin. I think he's been hit a couple times in the UFC where I'm like, I don't know if he took that very well. Like, he got knocked out at featherweight against Hakeem Dawodu. You know, that was years ago. But the guy is uber talented, powerful striker, very, very dynamic. He's very athletic. He's Canadian Mike Chandler, essentially. The dude is very, very good, especially with his jiu-jitsu. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and this is a guy that, like, he takes pride in that. Like, he worked at it. It's not like he rolled in a gym one day and he did jiu-jitsu enough to get a black belt like a Tyron Woodley. This motherfucker is going to dangle off your neck. he knows what he's doing. Like the fact that like he'll go for a guillotine, not have it with the grip, re-grip, and then get you. You can tell this guy really, really trains his jiu-jitsu here. And he's got every facet here to win. He can attack the legs, he can attack the body, he can take down Neil Magney, he can submit him, he can knock him the fuck out. Neil's a veteran though, and he's fought a lot of guys like Mike Malott. And my only issue, and I'll be here and telling you, and you'll hear it here first. Mike Malott tends to leak from the nose a little too easily for my liking. And maybe it's going to be this fight, maybe it won't be this fight. Down the line, it might be another veteran like, say, a Santiago Ponzinibbio. But I do suspect, and Neil Magney can't exploit this, but if you target that nose, you might be able to start something that Mike Malott can't finish. Meaning that, like, if you hit his nose, which I really do think that maybe Mickey Gall was the one who initially busted it up. Because Mickey, made him eat strawberries. It was just flowing with red. And because Mickey was kind of getting off on the striking, that was his first UFC fight. Granted, first UFC fight, he might have had jitters. He ended up knocking him the fuck out, which doesn't matter anymore. Like, he knocked him out, he won. But I noticed in the Adam Fugit fight, Adam didn't touch him. He kind of, I don't remember if it was a kick that grazed his nose, and then you can just see Mike like, oh, my nose is bleeding again. And I'm like, what the fuck? What? Like, because I'm watching and I'm kind of skipping forward to see like the action, and I see no blood to then like 10 seconds later, he's got a ton of blood in his face. I'm like, what happened there? So I look, it's a little grazing shot. So to me, if I'm Neil Magney and if I want to win this fight, obviously don't get kicked in the legs, don't get kicked in the body, don't get knocked out, attack the nose. And let's see how good his cardio is when he can't breathe out of his nose. Hell, I just realized even the picture I'm using right now in the video, it's him with his nose bloody. What the fuck? Did not plan that. But yeah, Mike's going to win this one. Mike is smart. He's dealt with long reach before, like against Adam Fugit. He's got a significant reach advantage over Mike Malott, and he handled it pretty well. It's just, again, if his nose starts bleeding and he can't breathe, I think Neil has a good chance to push that pace, push that pressure, and then he becomes less and less effective. It's just when you really close the distance on Mike, I do think he's strong enough to get takedowns on Neil Magney. The way he was getting takedowns on Fugit and on Lainesse were like, damn, this guy's strong as fuck. So there's, to me, really little to no risk on betting Mike Malott. I do think he's going to win. I don't think he's going to do anything stupid to lose in Canada. It's just like Magney doesn't really possess a whole ton of power. It's just Magney would have to start something early to then finish it late, meaning attack the nose, put on a harsh pressure on him, take him down, beat him up, clinch him up. But even when you get close to Mike, it's not wise to do so. So I do think that Neil's going to have trouble with the closing of the distance, right? Like, he is the better of the two when it comes to like the distance, I suppose, because he's got those long ass arms. But I really think that Mike has a better distance management style. Like, he'll throw kicks from a long distance and avoid anything significant. Mike, is his first loss, I think, in the UFC is going to come by someone who has nasty knockout power, and that ain't Neil Magney. So for that reason, I'm going Mike Malott round number 2. Submission, I think he might hurt Neil Magney, and Neil's going to shoot for a takedown, and then it's going to be Guillotine City for Mike Malott, who I don't know if he's French. Is that a French province in Ontario? Quebec? No, it's not Quebec. It's in, it's Toronto. Whatever. I'll go Mike Malott submission. All right, next bout, co-main event for the vacated Bantamweight Championship of the World. We've got Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Rocky versus Shitara. Shitara minus 170, plus 140 for Pennington. I need to go to the casino ASAP and parlay Mayra Bueno Silva. I'm not going to waste anyone's time here. I'm going to take Silva to win this one by a third-round submission. I'm going to waste your time while I drink Red Bull. I like to be spontaneous and improv when I'm recording. But if I'm being honest, man, I wrote this earlier today where I said, imagine a world where Raquel Pennington is UFC champion of the world. and you're talking to a friend who doesn't watch MMA, and you tell them, yeah, MMA is awesome. UFC is the best. I love watching it every Saturday. And then they bust out their phone and be like, oh, who are the champions? Let me take a look. And they check and they're like, oh, ooh, John Jones. That's awesome. I remember him. I've heard of him. And like, oh, Alex Pereira. Isn't it that guy that did this? I'm like, yeah. And then you get all the way to the bottom and you're like, Raquel Pennington. And you're like, huh, who is that? Let me look at her record. Oh, she's 15-8. Then they will laugh at you and say, you watch this? And I'd be like, then I pee my pants and I go run away crying. That cannot happen. That will not happen. Shitara is doing this for the good of the nation. She has to do it for the world. She cannot let Raquel Pennington be a UFC champion. Bueno Silva is uber talented. At 125, she would piss me off. Like, she would do some stupid shit. Like, what are you doing? Like, she lost to Manon Fiorot and Myra Moroz. Granted, those are good fighters. They can definitely beat good competition. It's no shame, especially Fiorot, who might be champion at 125 in the near future, possibly this year. Bueno Silva at 135, way different beast. Like, she's more confident. Like, she hits hard. She attacks the legs well. She is the closest thing we're going to get to Amanda Nunes without her being Amanda Nunes, right? I think she is such an anomaly because she's got nasty jiu-jitsu. She can hit hard. She's got an X factor where particularly her wrestling isn't all that great, but because she doesn't fear getting on her back or being on her back, because she will find a way to submit your ass. I think her cardio is definitely improved at 135, and I think she is destined to be this champion because I would gladly pay a UFC pay-per-view to see Mayra Bueno Silva versus Juliana Pena. I will boycott Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington for the title. No. That can't happen. Logically, though, I think Bueno Silva is just better everywhere. I think she hits harder. I think she's going to attack the legs. Pennington is lead leg heavy. I went back and rewatched the Nunes fight. Not all of it, obviously. I didn't want to watch that shit. It was terrible, but Raquel got her ass decimated that fight. Now, let me read you some of the people that she's beaten. And I really hate being this dick because I got nothing against Raquel. It's just that she's beaten Marion Renault. She beat Pani Kianzad. She beat Macy Chasson, Aspen Ladd, and the only really good fighter other than like maybe Pani Kianzad is Caitlin Viera. And if we're being honest, man, like I would watch that fight back. I thought Viera won. She should have won, right? There was one dissenting judge for round number 1, which here's the shit about Viera. Viera fought super close because she does that. She will do that. But Viera busted her up. There was one person bleeding in round number 1, and that was Pennington. And there was one judge who gave it to Pennington. I forgot who, but that one judge, had it gone correctly to Viera would have won that no problem. It's just crazy to me that like Pennington does have a way to win decisions by fighting kind of close. And in the case of Macy Chasson, he choked her out. But that kind of a win streak to me doesn't indicate like you should be fighting for the title. But let's look at Bueno Silva. She destroyed Uyanan, which, you know, she sucks, but still decimated her. Submitted Stephanie Egger, submitted with a knee bar. Wow. Her 3 finishes in 125 have been armbar, knee bar, and a ninja choke. I don't give a shit if they overturned it, but she beat Holly Holm, choked her the fuck out with a ninja choke. She's more than ready. If it stays on the feet, she's going to batter her. She's going to walk forward. She's going to throw overhand rights. She's going to kick her from distance, kick the legs. If it hits the ground, it's only going to hit the ground if Bueno Silva wants it to. Now, can Pennington knock her out? There's a chance, yes, because granted, Pennington does have good boxing. She does hit hard, but nothing to the point of like, oh my God, she's a knockout artist. It's Bueno Silva for me. She's going to win this fight. And I'm going to be super excited because I do want to see that Juliana Pena versus Bueno Silva fight. I kind of been interested in Pena for a bit. Like, she's fun to watch. She talks a lot of shit now. And I want to see that back and forth. And I think that would be a fun fight, right? Former champion versus the current champion. then all is right in the world. But if it's Raquel Pennington that wins this fight, man, I have to reevaluate what I'm doing with my life. I'm like, I buy all this fucking equipment just to talk about Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington. That's gonna fucking suck. But yeah, I've got Silva to win this one. I'm gonna parlay her with a couple other people on this card. I should be posting that hopefully today. All right, main event of the evening: Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. And there's a lot to talk about this fight. A lot of outside stuff. When it comes to the skill set between these two, I can't really go into much detail not because they're bad fighters. It's just that there's too many X factors involved in what they do, particular obviously in Dricus and what he does and what he's capable of. And Sean Strickland, he's kind of meat and potatoes, but like there are occasions where he can let things go and he's like looks like a killer. But for the UFC middleweight championship of the world, it's crazy to see Sean Strickland up there as middleweight champion. He deserves it. You know, he needs to get a different nickname. He still lives as Tarzan, but damn, it's going to be a great fight because we know the drama between these two. There's that quote unquote bad blood. We've got minus 124. Strickland come back on du Plessis plus 100. Great fight. Like, God darn, I'm excited for this fight. So let's talk about the bit of the drama, right? Obviously, I have a picture here of Sean Strickland crying. And again, I did this whole psychological breakdown of Sean Strickland, like literally on my spare time. I kept thinking about it, wrote down some shit. Like I have a background in like, psychology, behavioral science. So I'm like, what's going on in Sean Strickland's head? And I'm like, he's crying all over the place. He's attacking du Plessis. So I'm having all these range of emotions, like the attacking du Plessis. I'm like, oh no, he's lost his shit. Then I see that du Plessis basically beckoned him on. It is what it is. Then he goes on Theo Von and he starts crying. And that to me, I'm not here to shit on the guy for crying, but that's a bad sign for a guy that I want to bet, if I want to bet him. Is he having a mental breakdown? Usually with Sean, the way I kind of broke him down mentally is that like he has his trauma. He doesn't let it affect him in the cage because the cage, the fight game, that's his happy place. But when you infect his happy place with his trauma in his past, which in this case, Dricus kind of brought it into him, saying, hey, in the cage, I'm going to beat your ass like your dad. Which to me, I didn't have any issue with that. Like with Sean talking shit, the way he talks shit, it is what it is, right? Like Sean just, you got me, fuck you. He didn't take it that way. To me, it's because he brought that into the cage with him. He brought it into the fight. No one's ever done that other than Sean, and he leaves that shit outside of the cage, outside of the fight. Dricus then infected his quote-unquote happy place, as he calls it. He is happiest when he's fighting. He's happiest in the cage. And now Dricus polluted his happy place with those thoughts. And I started thinking like, oh, man, is that going to come across? If, say, Dricus says something, in the weigh-ins, I don't think he will. I think Dricus is he's a nice guy, right? Like he said it almost just to be a dick and like joke around with him, hoping that Sean would like say something that way they can have verbal back and forth at the press conference. But Sean really got butthurt. Oopsie doodle. And just punched the mic. But yeah, like Sean didn't take it well. And then afterwards, I think I mentioned earlier that Sean messaged du Plessis and he's like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And du Plessis was like, yeah, whatever. They kind of mended it. So I do think Sean's in a good mental space going into the fight. Leading up to it, I'm like, oh man, he's talking a bunch of shit. He was tweeting a lot about like, oh, you don't say this, you cross the line. I'm like, dude, you don't dictate that. Like you talk a lot of shit. You can't say like, oh, I'm just joking. Like, oh, like, he talks a lot of shit. That's why I like Sean. But like for him to like backtrack and be like, oh, you can't talk about this, you can't say that. I'm like, you're kind of being a little bitch there. So to me, du Plessis did get under his skin. So he does have like that mental advantage going in. Like the funny thing about du Plessis, the dude literally like he doesn't seem to let anything bother him. Like he does seem to have like a good head on his shoulders. But the thing about du Plessis, now if we're talking about skill, how many times have I shit on du Plessis? I've said, and I think I'm going to quote myself. I might be misquoting myself, but to give you a story, back when I was training, I went to a gym and I watched the guy shadow box. And I'm going to be very vulgar here, but this is exactly what I said. I said, and it's fucked up because I ended up like, I don't, I ended up judging one of his fights, but like later on, I'm like, or in the past, I was like, this guy's moving funny. He's not necessarily like sparring well, like he looks off. And I know I'm coming across like a dick because like I don't train. Like this is before I started training. I was in the class to like get a feel for it. But I'm looking at this guy's shadow boxing, and I say to myself and to my then girlfriend, I'm like, this dude is kind of moving like he's got a dick up his ass. And I'm like, oh, it turned out, he had done some movies in the past, but regardless, that's exactly what I said about Dricus. Like he is moving, like he's got something up his ass. Like he's just awkward. Like he's super goofy. His first fight with Maluco Perez looked super awkward. Like he just didn't feel comfortable. So I'm like, maybe it was the bright lights. It was his UFC debut, but he looked like dog shit. And then he ended up knocking him out. And I'm like, huh, all right. He's got knockout power. That's good to know. Then his next fight, I think it was Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles, I'm like, yeah, he's going to whip his ass. Like his striking looked dog shit. He knocks out Trevin Giles too, takes him down, dominates him on the mat. I'm like, okay, he's got knockout power and he can grapple pretty damn well. And he's got nasty knockout power, but still he was like getting punched and he was like, oh. So, okay, he trains, he fights like he's got a dick up his ass. He's got knockout power. He can grapple, but he doesn't take punches well. I'm like, all right, Brad Taveras, we got this, Brad. Put some money on Brad. I'm like, Brad's got takedown defense, check. Good striker, check. What do we see from Dricus? He doesn't do well, can't take him down, tries to do a lateral drop, lands on his own back and hits the back of his head. Brad Taveras, wins that first round. What does Dricus do? Bomb rushes him with his chin in the air and just throws like robot punches. I'm like, fuck. He wins the fight that way. I'm like, how can he keep getting away with this shit? Like he can't. We need to stop him. I'm like, Darren Till. I was like, no, Darren Till's gonna lose this fight. This is why I'm like, all right, you know what? I can't keep betting against this guy. But Darren Till's on a fucking losing streak. There's no way he's gonna beat him. Dricus steamrolls him early. I'm like, okay, here we go. Then he starts losing, and then in the third round he takes him down, chokes him out. I'm like, all right, Dricus has so many negative things to him, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. So I'm like, is it all that matters that he wins? I'm like, yeah, I guess that's all that matters. Derek Brunson. Derek beats his ass early, and then he finishes him in the second. Like he looked really bad. And again, it's like he is tricking you. He looks really bad sometimes, but again, he keeps winning, and that's all that matters. Robert Whittaker, he was like he was like plus 300 against Robert Whittaker. And this is when I knew I'm like, don't do any fucking tape. Doesn't matter. Just pick him to win and hope for the best. And he ends up steamrolling one of the greatest middleweights ever in UFC history, easily. Like early on, he had some trouble with like the distance and the gauging, and then eventually battered his ass. I cannot keep counting out Dricus. I didn't do any tape on Dricus. It's pointless because all it's going to do is convince me that he's going to lose this fight. And every time I'm convinced that he loses a fight, he ends up winning the fight. For Sean, I don't need to tape Sean Strickland. I know what Sean Strickland's going to do. Like Sean, to me, this is a very easy fight for Sean, which is crazy to say because I do think he's going to lose it regardless. Sean is the better striker. Sean is definitely the more, I guess he's got the better cardio, at least that we know of, because, two-nostril Plessis, we really yet to see what he can do when pushed hard. Sean defensively better than Plessis. There's just so much upside to Sean when it comes to this fight. Like if he attacks the body, he can definitely slow down Plessis. Again, he is the cleaner striker on the ground. I think he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. We rarely see that from Sean, but I think he is motivated to win this fight. And if we get to finally possibly see the ground game of Sean Strickland, because if he mixes in takedowns and if he fights intelligently, and I mean, if Sean Strickland comes out here like the Sean Strickland that he is, meaning like he goes for takedowns, mixes in, his strikes, throws kicks, he can quite possibly finish Plessis within 3 rounds. I don't know if that's what Sean's going to do. Is Sean going to be over aggressive? Is Sean just going to fall for the same shit that he always does? Meaning like he fought Izzy. He beat Izzy strictly on the feet. Didn't attempt any takedowns. And that was the smartest thing for him to do, and he didn't do it. Granted, he still won that fight because he is so awkward with his striking defense that it just threw off Israel. And it's not to say that Izzy had a bad night. It was a bad night, but when I say that, it's not because it was oh no, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Strickland made that happen. Why I'm picking du Plessis is that if that same thing happens to du Plessis early, Dricus is, for lack of a better term, and this is, I mean this as a compliment, he's I guess there's a better way to put it, but he is dumb enough to not care about the threat of the feints and the movement. I think Dricus can go at any point, like say, fuck this. This is very, very risky, but he doesn't care. And that's what makes du Plessis so effective, is that he doesn't have those internal fight IQ thoughts of like, if I bum rush him, there's a chance I can get hit. And there's a very high chance. He might even do the math in his head. This is like a 98% chance I'm going to get hit. 2% is fucking great to me. Then he just goes for it. And because, say, for example, Sean's like, he's not going to do this because there's a 98% chance I'll knock him the fuck out if he does. He doesn't expect it, that kind of stuff. And that's what I'll say about Sean. Like, I don't think he's the greatest mind outside the cage. I think he's funny. I think I relate to him a lot. And that's why I can kind of gauge what kind of a fighter he is, especially how he thinks inside the cage. I think he does most of his thinking, his most cerebral consciousness is inside the fight game, inside the cage, inside the UFC cage. And I think he processes things very well because he does have a high fight IQ that could potentially get exploited by a guy like Dricus. Like, he's not going to shoot because that would be stupid. But du Plessis like, fuck that, I'm going for it. And that's why I'm going to go with du Plessis. That's why I'm going to go place a bet on du Plessis later on, because he's just an anomaly. I cannot keep betting against them because they are both fighters. Strickland more of like a savage, essentially. Like, I think Strickland is more likely to kill a man with his bare hands. But inside of competition, I do think Dricus is more willing to take these risks where he might shoot for a takedown, where it may not be effective logically, but he might still get it anyways because he's just the uber Chad. He literally is the uber Chad. Like, he's got everything going for him, which is crazy. He's a good looking dude, great body, well spoken, but he fights the way he fights, and it's weird. It's super weird. For Strickland, on the other hand, it's kind of like the opposites of themselves. There really are polar opposites, where we've got, Sean Strickland, not necessarily the prettiest guy, not necessarily the most intelligent guy. He is a UFC champion, though. And we've got Dricus du Plessis, came up good upbringing, wasn't particularly what you would consider poor, probably more, what would you call it, more privileged than Sean Strickland. But ultimately, via the laws of like diversity and inclusion, Dricus wins because he's African. So I'm going to go Dricus du Plessis, round number 3, TKO. The dude has massive power, and I think that he eventually will hurt Sean and crack him with something ridiculous. And I mean absolutely ridiculous. Like, he hurt Whitaker with a jab. And it was like the goofiest looking jab, but it was a very powerful jab, and it still hurt him. And it's going to be a fun fight. Like, I am rooting for, honestly, both men. I would not be upset if either man wins, but I think this is Dricus's time. I think he can mix it up more so than Sean. I don't think Sean's going to be looking for takedowns. I think Dricus will mix them up if he has to. And it's going to be a fantastic fight, and I'm very much looking forward to the first pay-per-view and the first really male title fight of the year. Again, if Bueno Silva doesn't bring home that gold, I'm going to be devastated. But yeah, those are my predictions for UFC 279. Let me know what you think in the comments. But yeah, it's a crazy, crazy fight between these two because expectations, man. You expect things from both men. And I've learned one thing is don't expect shit from du Plessis other than for him to win. And it's going to be ugly. But at the very end, I think he can pull it off. Didn't even mention his weird-ass guillotine. He has a nasty guillotine. I don't think he'll pull it off on Sean. But yeah, it's going to be a great fight. Again, Johnny, TigerBomb MMA. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next week.